Hello everyone, I am the storyteller and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. I heard the knocking at 3 a.m. Not gentle tapping, but desperate pounding that made my front door shake. I was alone in my house, sitting in my living room, trying to read a book while the rain hammered against the windows. The storm had been going for hours, sheets of water running down the glass panes, making everything outside look warped and distorted. The pounding came again, harder this desperate. 3 loud strikes that made me jump in my chair. My heart started racing immediately. Nobody should be out at this hour, especially not in weather like this. I put my book down and stood up slowly. The hardwood floor creaked under my feet as I moved toward the window. The streetlight outside cast a weak yellow glow through the rain, barely illuminating my front yard. Water pooled in the grass and flowed down my driveway in streams. Another series of pounds on the door. "Please, let me in. I need help." A man's voice, raw and frightened. I pulled back the living room curtain just enough to peek out. There was someone standing in the middle of the street. A man, I thought at first. He wore what looked like a dark suit, completely drenched. His hair was plastered to his head. Even from here I could see he was shivering. "Please," he called out again. "My car broke down. I just need to use your phone." My hand went to my pocket, feeling my cell phone there. Something felt wrong. The timing, the situation, none of it made sense. Who would be out driving at 3 a.m. in this weather? And why was he standing in the middle of the street instead of on my porch where he'd been knocking? I glanced at the grandfather clock in my living room to confirm the time. 3:02 a.m. The pendulum swung back and forth with its usual steady rhythm, each tick seeming louder than normal in the quiet house. When I looked back out the window, my blood went cold. The figure in the street had changed. It was still roughly man-shaped, but wrong somehow. The proportions weren't right. The arms too long, the torso too thin, and its face? There was no face. Just smooth, blank darkness where features should be. I stumbled back from the window, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. This couldn't be real. I was tired. The rain was playing tricks with my vision. That had to be it. The pounding came again, but this time from the back door. I spun around, nearly tripping over my own feet. The kitchen was dark except for the dim light spilling in from the living room. Bang, bang, bang. The front door this time, then immediately after, 3 more pounds on the back door. It was impossible for anyone to move that fast between the doors. I ran to the kitchen and flipped on every light switch I could reach. The fluorescent bulbs flickered to life, harsh white light flooding the room. Through the small window above the sink, I saw something move in my backyard, a dark shape ducking out of view. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I tried to dial 911, but my fingers kept hitting wrong numbers. I had to delete and start over 3 times. More pounding now from all around the house. Every door, every window, all at once. The noise was deafening. The walls seemed to vibrate with each impact. Finally, the call connected. 911, what's your emergency? There's something trying to get into my house, I said, my voice cracking. 3487 Oak Street, please hurry. Sir, can you describe the intruder? Another series of pounds made me jump. I don't know. It looked like a man at first, but now... I swallowed hard. Now it's not. It has no face. Please, just send someone. Units are on their way, the dispatcher said. Stay on the line with me. Are all your doors and windows locked? I did a quick mental inventory. Yes, they're all locked. I always check before... The power went out. Every light in the house died at once, plunging me into total darkness. Even the streetlights outside were gone. My phone's screen provided the only illumination. Sir, are you still there? The power's out, I whispered. The whole street is dark. The pounding stopped. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise had been. Rain continued to fall outside, but otherwise there was nothing. No cars, no wind, no distant sirens. Then I heard it, a wet sliding sound coming from the living room, like something damp being dragged across the floor. Someone's inside. I breathed into the phone. Oh God, something's inside my house. I backed into a corner of the kitchen, trying to make myself as small as possible. The sliding sound grew closer. In the weak light from my phone screen, I saw something dark move past the kitchen doorway. It was low to the ground, like someone crawling, but the movement was all wrong. Too fluid, too smooth. "Units are 4 minutes out," the dispatcher said. Her voice sounded very far away. "Can you get to a room with a locked door?" "The basement," I whispered. "I have to go. Please hurry." I ended the call and switched to my phone's flashlight. The bright beam cut through the darkness, but I almost wished I hadn't turned it on. Because now I could see the wet trails on my floor. Long, dark streaks leading from the living room to the kitchen. They glistened in the light, but the liquid wasn't clear like rainwater. It was thick and dark, almost black. Moving as quietly as I could, I crept toward the basement door. Each step felt like it took an eternity. The floor creaked under my weight, and I froze every time, listening for movement. I reached the door and carefully turned the handle. The hinges squeaked slightly as I pulled it open. The basement stairs descended into absolute darkness. Something moved behind me. I whirled around, sweeping the flashlight beam across the kitchen. For a split second, I caught a glimpse of something tall and thin ducking behind the refrigerator. Its skin was pale gray and seemed to glisten with moisture. Those impossibly long arms trailed on the ground. I didn't think. I ran down the basement stairs, taking them 2 at a time, nearly falling in my panic. I slammed the door behind me and threw the deadbolt. My father had installed it years ago, joking about needing a secure place for his wine collection. I'd never been more grateful for anything in my life. The basement was cold and damp. Metal shelves lined the walls, stocked with canned goods and emergency supplies. My flashlight beam bounced off mason jars and created strange shadows. The washing machine and dryer sat in one corner, silent and dark. I backed away from the stairs until I hit the far wall, then slid down to sit on the concrete floor. My whole body was shaking. Sweat ran down my face despite the cold. Something scratched at the basement door. Light, delicate sounds like fingernails dragging across wood. Then a thump, as if something heavy had leaned against it. "Please," a voice called down. It sounded almost like the man from earlier, but distorted somehow, like a bad recording. "I just need help. Let me in." I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still hear it. The voice changed, becoming higher, then lower, cycling through different tones like it was trying to find the right one. "Let me in, let me in, let me in, let me in." The words began to run together, becoming a rhythmic chant. Other voices joined in, some deep, some high, some barely human at all. They seemed to come from all around me, not just from upstairs. I squeezed my eyes shut and pressed my hands harder against my ears. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. A new sound cut through the voices, sirens, growing louder. Relief flooded through me. Help was coming. The chanting stopped. I heard rapid movement upstairs, like something large scrambling across the floor. Then nothing. I kept my eyes closed and didn't move, even when I heard car doors slamming outside and voices calling out. Even when heavy footsteps moved through the house above me. Only when someone pounded on the basement door and shouted, "Police! Anyone down there?" did I finally lower my hands. "Yes!" I called back, my voice hoarse. "Yes, I'm here. The door's locked." "Are you injured?" "No, I'm okay. Just give me a minute to unlock it." My legs felt weak as I stood up. I had to brace myself against the wall to stay upright. When I finally made it to the stairs and opened the door, I found 2 police officers with flashlights drawn. More lights moved around upstairs and I could hear radio chatter. "Sir, can you tell us what happened?" one of the officers asked as they helped me up the stairs. I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come out right. How could I describe what I'd seen? They'd think I was crazy or drunk or high. Then I saw the trails on the floor, dark streaks leading from the living room to the kitchen, exactly where I'd seen them before. In the beam of a police flashlight, they looked almost purple. "What is that?" I heard one officer ask another. "No idea. Forensics is on the way." They led me outside. The rain had stopped, but water still dripped from the trees and gutters. More police cars had arrived, their lights painting the street in alternating red and blue. Neighbors had come out to see what was happening, standing in small groups on their porches and lawns. An officer wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sat me down in the back of an ambulance. As a paramedic checked my vital signs, I looked up at my house. All the windows were dark except one, my bedroom window on the second floor. And for just a moment, I thought I saw something move behind the glass. Something tall and thin, with arms that reached almost to the floor. But when I blinked, it was gone. They never found any evidence of forced entry. All the doors and windows were locked from the inside. The strange trails on the floor turned out to be water mixed with some kind of oil, but they couldn't identify what kind. The power outage affected only my house. A blown fuse in the electrical panel, they said. I sold the house a month later. I couldn't stay there. Couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the dark corners and empty rooms. The new owners gutted the place and renovated it completely. Sometimes I drive by, just to see it. It looks different now, brighter somehow. But I never drive by at night. And if I'm ever out late and it starts to rain, I go straight home and lock every door and window. Because I know what's out there in the darkness. I know what waits in the rain, wearing faces that aren't quite right, calling out in voices that aren't quite human. And sometimes, on stormy nights when I'm lying in bed, I hear knocking. Not at my door, but inside my walls. Soft at first, then louder, more insistent. And a voice, distorted and strange, asking to be let in. I just pull my blankets tighter and wait for morning. Because I know now, some doors should never be opened. Some help should never be given. And nothing good ever comes knocking at 3 a.m. My hands won't stop shaking as I review these photos on my camera's LCD screen. I've been sitting in my car for 20 minutes now, parked in my driveway, unable to go inside. The screen's blue glow illuminates my sweating face in the growing darkness. I need to document this while it's fresh, while I can still remember every detail of what happened at that factory. I'm a commercial photographer, real estate mostly, but I do architectural shots too. Yesterday, my friend Mark told me about an abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of town. He knows I sometimes shoot abandoned places for my portfolio. Perfect for that moody industrial stuff you like, he said. The factory sat at the end of an overgrown access road, about half a mile from the highway. I arrived around 5 p.m., timing it for that golden hour light that photographers chase. The main building was a 3-story red brick structure with rows of tall windows, most of them broken. Vines crawled up the walls. The parking lot had cracked apart, with weeds pushing through the asphalt. I grabbed my camera bag from the trunk, my Canon 5D Mark IV with 3 different lenses. The weight of the bag felt reassuring against my shoulder. I'd done this dozens of times before. Urban exploration photography was nothing new to me. The front entrance was chained shut, but I found a side door hanging off its hinges. The hinges screamed when I pushed it open. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor as I entered what looked like an old loading dock. The air felt thick with dust and decay. I started shooting right away. The light was perfect. Long shadows stretching across debris-strewn floors, sunbeams cutting through broken windows. I moved methodically through the first floor, documenting the abandoned machinery, the graffiti-covered walls, the way nature was slowly reclaiming the space. The second floor held the main production area. Rows of rusted sewing machines still bolted to long tables, spools of rotting thread, a calendar from 1989 still hanging on one wall. I took dozens of shots, playing with different angles and compositions. That's when I heard the first noise, a metallic clang from somewhere above me. In abandoned buildings, you get used to random sounds, settling foundations, birds in the rafters, wind rattling loose metal. But this sounded deliberate, like someone dropping something heavy. I froze, listening. Nothing but silence followed. After a few minutes, I convinced myself it was just the usual abandoned building noises and kept shooting. The third floor was where things started getting strange. The space was mostly empty except for some old office furniture and filing cabinets. The sunset light streamed in through the western windows, casting long orange rays across the dusty floor. I was getting some great shots. I noticed my breathing had gotten faster. The air felt different up here, heavier somehow. The hair on my arms stood up despite the warm evening air. Again, I told myself this was normal. Empty buildings play tricks on your mind. I moved to the windows to shoot the sunset through the broken glass. That's when my camera's battery died. No warning, just suddenly went black. Annoying, but not unusual when shooting in RAW format. I reached into my bag for my spare battery. My hands fumbled with the battery compartment. Why were my fingers trembling? I got the new battery in and powered up the camera. Started reviewing the shots I'd taken so far. That's when I saw it. In a photo of one of the second floor windows, there was a face. Not a clear face, more like a reflection, distorted by the broken glass. But unmistakably human features. Dark eyes. The suggestion of a mouth. I zoomed in on the LCD screen. The face was partially hidden by glare on the glass, but it was there. I hadn't seen anyone when I took that shot. The building had been completely empty. My heart rate picked up. I started flipping through more photos. There it was again. Different window. Same face. And again. And again. The same ghostly reflection appeared in nearly every shot I'd taken that had a window in frame. The face wasn't always in the same position. Sometimes it seemed to be looking directly at the camera. Other times it appeared to be gazing off to the side, but it was the same face. I was sure of it. A loud crash from directly above made me jump. My camera clattered to the floor. This wasn't foundation settling or birds. It sounded like someone had thrown something heavy. I snatched up my camera and ran to the stairwell. My footsteps thundered on the metal stairs as I descended. Another crash, closer this time. I nearly fell as I rounded the landing between the third and second floors. More sounds now, dragging noises, footsteps that weren't mine. They seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. I reached the second floor and sprinted past the rows of sewing machines. The orange sunset light had faded, leaving the space in deep shadows. My chest burned as I ran. Sweat soaked through my shirt. Something moved in my peripheral vision, a dark shape passing between machines. I didn't turn to look, just ran faster. The first floor stairwell felt miles away. My camera bag slammed against my back with each stride. Another crash behind me, followed by the sound of breaking glass. I hit the first floor landing hard, my ankle twisting slightly. Pain shot up my leg, but I kept moving. The exit was just ahead. Pale twilight showed through the broken door. More movement in the shadows. More sounds of footsteps, closer now. The door seemed to stretch further away with each step. I burst through the doorway into the dying daylight, ran full speed across the cracked parking lot toward my car. Only when I reached it did I dare to look back. The factory stood silent. No movement in any of the windows. No sounds except my own ragged breathing and pounding heart. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys twice before getting the car door open. I threw my camera bag in the passenger seat and started the engine. The tires spun on loose gravel as I accelerated down the access road. Now I sit in my driveway, unable to go inside my house, unable to stop staring at these photos. The face is still there in every shot. I've zoomed in, adjusted the exposure, tried to convince myself it's just a trick of light and shadow. But I know what I saw. And the face seems clearer now than it did before. More detailed. In some shots, I swear I can see it smiling. My phone buzzes. A text from Mark. "Hey, how'd the factory shots turn out?" I don't respond. Instead, I open my email and start attaching photos. I need to document this. Need someone else to see what I'm seeing. My fingers shake as I type. Mark. Look at the windows in these photos. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me you see it too. I hit send and wait. 5 minutes pass. 10. My phone buzzes again. Mark's response. What photos? The attachments are all blank. I check my email. The photos sent successfully. I can see them right there in the sent folder. But when I open them, Mark is right. Every single image is completely black. My hands fumble with my camera again. Heart pounding, I check the memory card. All the photos from today are gone. The card is empty. But I know what I saw. I remember every detail, every angle of that face in the broken windows. And now, as darkness falls completely, I can't shake the feeling that if I look up at my own windows, I might see that face looking back at me. I've been sitting in this car for almost an hour now. My house is dark. I always leave a light on, but not today. The windows are black rectangles against the pale siding. Something moves behind one of those windows. Just a shadow, there and gone. My chest tightens. Sweat rolls down my back despite the cool evening air. I start the car again. I can't stay here. Can't go inside. Not with those windows. Not with what might be watching from behind them. The engine roars as I back out of the driveway. I don't know where I'm going. A hotel, maybe. Somewhere with no windows. Somewhere I can think and try to make sense of what happened today. But even as I drive away, I keep checking my rearview mirror, because I know that face is out there somewhere, and I can't shake the feeling that it's not done with me yet. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Mark. Just drove by that factory. Weird. Could have sworn it burned down years ago. Nothing there now but an empty lot. I almost run a red light as I read his words. My hands grip the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turn white, because I know what I saw today. I was there. I took those photos. Didn't I? The traffic light turns green. I accelerate through the intersection, heading for the highway. In my side mirror, a familiar shape catches my eye, just for a second in the reflection of my car window. A face. I keep driving. The night grows darker, and somewhere behind me, in every window and every reflection, that face watches, waiting. I don't think I'll be taking any more photos for a while, and I definitely won't be looking too closely at windows after dark. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder about that face, about who or what it belonged to. And I wonder if anyone else has seen it, if anyone else has photos they can't explain, memories they can't trust, and a lingering fear of reflections in broken glass. I wonder if they're out there somewhere like me, avoiding windows and deleting photos without looking at them, running from something they can't explain and can't forget. And I wonder if that face is watching them too. I should have known something was wrong when Sarah never went into that room. Not once in the 3 months I'd been visiting her apartment. She'd just walked past it, like it wasn't even there. When I moved in last week, I asked her about it. She shrugged and said it was just storage. But storage rooms have stuff in them. This one was empty. The first night nothing happened. The second night too. But on the third night, my phone died during a work call. Sarah was already asleep, and I didn't want to wake her up searching for my charger. I remembered seeing an outlet in that empty room earlier that day when I'd glanced in while moving boxes. The door didn't squeak when I opened it. The room was cold, maybe 10 degrees colder than the hallway. My phone's flashlight showed bare walls, no furniture, just a single outlet on the far wall. The wooden floor was dusty except for a clean circular patch in the center, about 3 feet wide. I plugged in my phone and left it on the floor. The charging icon lit up. Good enough. At 3 a.m. I woke up needing to pee. The bathroom was past that room. The hallway was dark except for a flickering light coming from under the door. My phone screen, maybe? But the rhythm was wrong. Too irregular. Then I heard it. A soft tapping from inside, like fingernails on wood, but slower. Tap. 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 I stood there in my boxers, feet frozen to the floor. The tapping stopped. A whisper leaked through the crack under the door. Not words exactly, more like the sound of speaking but muffled, like someone talking through a pillow. My throat went dry. I needed that phone for work in the morning. The whispers continued, rising and falling like waves. I grabbed the doorknob. The metal was ice cold. When I turned it, the whispering stopped instantly. I pushed the door open. My phone lay on the floor where I'd left it, screen dark. The charging light blinked steadily. The room was empty, but the clean circle in the dust was bigger now, maybe 4 feet across. I snatched my phone and yanked the charger from the wall. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. I ran to the bathroom, then back to bed. Sarah was still asleep. I lay there until morning, listening. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. My neck muscles were tight from lack of sleep. During lunch, I texted Sarah, "Hey, what's the deal with that empty room? Previous tenant move out or something?" She replied an hour later, "Don't really use it. Better that way." Better that way? What the hell did that mean? I called her, but it went to voicemail. That night, Sarah worked late. I ordered pizza and ate alone on the couch, trying not to look down the hallway. Around 10 p.m., I heard Sarah's key in the lock. But before she came in, I heard that tapping again. Tap, 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 coming from the empty room. Sarah walked in, looking tired. The tapping stopped. She kissed my cheek and headed for the shower. I followed her. "Sarah, we need to talk about that room." She turned on the shower. "What about it?" "I heard something in there. Last night and just now." She was quiet for a moment. "You went in?" "Yeah, to charge my phone. But that's not the point. There's something—" "Don't charge anything in there," she interrupted. "Just don't go in there anymore, okay?" She stepped into the shower before I could respond. I lay in bed that night, Sarah breathing softly beside me. The digital clock read 2:47 a.m. when the whispers started again. Sarah didn't stir. How could she sleep through this? The whispers grew louder. I could almost make out words now. Almost. At 3 a.m. exactly, a loud thud came from the room, like something heavy falling. Sarah bolted upright. "Did you hear that?" I asked. She grabbed my arm. Her hand was trembling. "Don't go look. Please." Another thud, then another, like footsteps but too heavy to be human. The whole apartment seemed to vibrate. What the fuck is going on? I threw off the covers. "Mark, don't." Sarah tried to hold me back, but I pulled away. The thud stopped when I reached the hallway. The door was closed, but blue light pulsed around its edges, like a TV with bad reception. The whispers had become a low moan. I reached for the doorknob. Sarah screamed behind me, "No!" Too late. The door swung open. The room wasn't empty anymore. The clean circle in the dust had grown to fill the entire floor. In the center stood a figure, tall and thin, its proportions all wrong. Its head nearly touched the ceiling. It had no face, just smooth, pale skin stretched tight over a skull-like shape. Its arms hung down past its knees, fingers dragging on the floor. Blue light rippled across its surface like water. As I watched, frozen, it slowly turned its head toward me. Where eyes should have been, there were only deep black hollows. I slammed the door and ran. Sarah was already grabbing her keys and phone. We spent the night in her car, parked outside a 24-hour diner. "How long?" I asked finally as the sun came up. "How long has it been there?" Sarah stared straight ahead. "Since I moved in, 2 years ago. The landlord said the room came with the apartment. Said I couldn't change anything about it, couldn't even paint the walls." She laughed, a harsh sound. "The rent was so cheap. Now I know why. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Would you have moved in if I had?" I didn't answer. We both knew I wouldn't have. "It never came out before," she continued. "It stayed in there until you brought electronics in. The charging phone. It must have given it power or something. I don't know." We drove to her parents' house that morning. Called a moving company to pack up our stuff. Everything except what was in that room. Sarah broke the lease, lost her security deposit. We didn't care. The new apartment costs more, but every room is usable, normal, yet sometimes at night I still hear it. Not real sounds, just memories. Tap, tap, tap. And I wonder about that empty room, and who lives there now, and whether they've tried charging their phone in there yet. Sarah doesn't talk about it. She threw away the old lease with the old address. But last week I caught her deleting a text from her old landlord. Just 4 words. "The room misses you." I deleted my contact info from the moving company's database, changed my email address, switched phone carriers. I'm not taking any chances. Because sometimes, late at night, my phone screen flickers with a blue light I've seen before. And in those moments I swear I can hear whispers growing louder, almost clear enough to understand. But I don't want to understand. Some doors should stay closed. Some rooms should stay empty. And some messages should never be answered, no matter how many times they call. Last night, my new phone died inexplicably. The battery was at 100%, then suddenly nothing. In the darkness of our new bedroom, I heard it, faint but unmistakable, tap, tap, tap. I threw the phone away this morning. Sarah didn't ask why. She just nodded and handed me a cheap flip phone she'd bought as a backup weeks ago. No GPS, no internet, no apps. "It's harder to track a flip phone," she said. Harder for what to track, I wanted to ask. But I didn't. Because deep down I already knew the answer. That room wasn't just a room. It was a door. And whatever came through it is still looking for us. I check the closets every night now. Look behind the shower curtain, under the bed. The rational part of my brain says I'm being paranoid. But then I remember those hollow eyes, that stretched skin, those 2 long fingers dragging on the floor. Sarah sleeps with the lights on. I don't blame her. Neither of us talks about the fact that we can't remember exactly what our old apartment number was or even the street name. It's like those details have been erased, leaving only the memory of that room, that figure, that blue light. Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m., my body rigid with fear, convinced I can hear whispers coming from our new closet. But it's never real, just echoes of that night playing tricks on my mind. We're safe now. That's what I tell myself. We moved far away, changed our information, left no trail. But yesterday I found something in our new mailbox. A small piece of paper, blank except for a single mark. A perfect circle drawn in dust. I burned it immediately. Didn't tell Sarah. But that night, as we lay in bed, both pretending to sleep, I heard her whisper something. So quiet I almost missed it. It knows where we are. I pretended not to hear. Pretended not to notice when she got up and checked all the doors and windows again. Pretended not to see her delete another text from an unknown number. But I know she's right. Because this morning when I looked in the mirror, I saw something in the reflection behind me. Just for a second. A tall, thin shape. Faceless. Waiting. I didn't turn around. Sometimes not looking is the only way to stay sane. We're moving again next week. No forwarding address this time, no smartphones, no social media, no electronic trails. Because now we know the truth. In a world of endless connections, some things are better left disconnected. Some doors are better left closed. And some rooms should stay empty. But late at night, when the power flickers and the shadows grow long, I wonder if it matters. If anywhere is really far enough away. Because in those moments between sleeping and waking, I can still hear it. Tap, 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 and it's getting closer. The security footage from last Tuesday night showed something that wasn't supposed to be there. I've watched the grainy black and white video 20 times now, and my hands won't stop shaking. The shape moves like a person, but it's not solid. It drifts through the tables in my bar like smoke, and I can see the neon beer signs right through it. I should start at the beginning. 3 weeks ago when things first got weird. I've been running O'Malley's bar for 6 years now. Took over from my uncle after he retired to Florida. It's nothing special, just your typical neighborhood joint in South Boston. Dark wood, brass fixtures, the smell of stale beer that never quite goes away no matter how much you clean. I know every creak in the floorboards, every scratch on the bar top, every regular who comes through those doors. The first thing I noticed was the Budweiser tap. I was doing inventory on a slow Monday afternoon when it started pouring on its own. Not just a dribble, a full stream of beer straight into the drain tray. I checked the mechanism thinking maybe it was stuck, but everything looked fine. When I touched the handle, it stopped. I chalked it up to old equipment and made a note to have the draft system serviced. But then it happened again 2 days later, and again the next week. Always the same tap. Always when no one was near it. The repair guy found nothing wrong with the system. Then the jukebox started acting up. We've got one of those digital touch tunes machines connected to the internet. Sometimes in the middle of normal songs, the audio would distort. Not like normal static or interference, more like someone whispering through the music. Words I couldn't quite make out. Once during closing time, it started playing The Parting Glass, an old Irish funeral song, even though no one had selected it. When I checked the play history, there was no record of the song. My bartender Maria quit after a glass flew off the shelf and shattered against the wall right next to her head. She'd worked here for 3 years, wasn't the jumpy type, but she said she'd felt something brush past her, cold as ice, right before the glass moved. I hired a new guy named Pete to replace her. He lasted 4 days before quitting. Said he kept hearing someone calling his name from the storage room when he was alone in the bar. The final straw was when all the bottles on the top shelf started rattling at once, like there was an earthquake. Except nothing else in the bar was moving. I started staying later after closing, watching and listening. The bar feels different at night when it's empty. Every sound echoes. The ice machine's mechanical groans sound like breathing. The neon signs cast weird shadows that move when you're not looking directly at them. Last Tuesday, I decided to review the security footage from the past few weeks. We've got 4 cameras, one behind the bar, one covering the main seating area, one watching the entrance, and one in the storage room. I went through the tapes methodically, looking for anything unusual. At first, I just saw the things I already knew about. The self-pouring tap, the flying glass, the rattling bottles. But then I noticed something in the background of several clips. A distortion in the image, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. It moved with purpose, drifting between tables, lingering near customers. In one clip, it hovered next to a guy at the bar for almost 10 minutes. The guy kept rubbing his arms like he was cold, even though it was 75 degrees in the bar. The footage from 3 a.m. last Tuesday is what really got to me. The bar was closed, lights off except for the exit signs and neon beer logos. The cameras have night vision, so everything appears in shades of gray. I was about to fast forward when I saw it. A human shape, translucent but clearly visible, walking through the main room. It moved like it was floating an inch above the floor. The edges of the figure were blurry, but I could make out the basic form: head, shoulders, arms, legs. It stopped at the bar and seemed to sit on one of the stools. For 20 minutes, it just sat there. Then it turned its head toward the camera. I swear I could see eyes. I've watched that clip over and over. There's no way it's a trick of the light or a camera malfunction. The other cameras caught it too, from different angles. Whatever it is, it's real. The next night, I set up additional cameras and left digital voice recorders running in different parts of the bar. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, didn't want people thinking I was crazy, though maybe I am crazy. Would be easier if I was. The new footage showed more activity. The figure appeared again, this time moving behind the bar. It went through the motions of pulling beers and mixing drinks, but its hands passed right through everything it tried to touch. On one recorder, I picked up what sounds like someone humming an old tune, the same song the jukebox had played that night, The Parting Glass. I started researching the building's history. City records show the bar has been here since 1947, though it's had different names over the years. 3 people have died here, 2 heart attacks and 1 guy who choked on a chicken wing in '82. But the ghost, if that's what it is, doesn't match their descriptions. I asked some of the older regulars if they remembered anything strange happening over the years. Most just laughed it off. But Tom Murphy, who's been drinking here since the 60s, got real quiet when I mentioned it. He said his father used to tell stories about a bartender who worked here in the early days. Guy named Michael Donovan. Supposedly he lived in the apartment upstairs and was completely devoted to the bar. Never married, barely took time off. One morning in 1956, they found him dead behind the bar. Heart attack. He was only 42. I found an old photo of the bar from 1955 in the Boston Herald archives. There's Donovan standing behind the bar, tall and thin with dark hair. The image is grainy, but something about his posture, the way he's standing, it matches the figure I've been seeing on the security footage. The activity has been increasing. Last night, every bottle in the well started pouring at once, spraying liquor everywhere. The jukebox played nothing but Irish songs for an hour straight, no matter what customers selected. The temperature behind the bar dropped so low I could see my breath. I'm writing this all down because I need to decide what to do. I could sell the bar, walk away. But something tells me Donovan wouldn't like that. This place was his life, and apparently still is, even after death. Maybe he's not trying to scare people away. Maybe he's just trying to keep doing the job he loved. So I'm going to try something tonight. After closing, I'm going to set up a shot of Jameson. I heard that was his favorite, and just talk to him. Tell him I understand wanting to take care of the place, but he's scaring away my staff and customers. See if we can work something out. I've got the cameras rolling and my phone set to record. If anything happens, at least I'll have proof I'm not losing my mind. Update, 3:47 a.m. I did it. I set up the shot and started talking, feeling like an idiot at first. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then the temperature dropped. The shot glass slid across the bar on its own and tipped over, empty. The jukebox clicked on, playing The Parting Glass again, but this time without any distortion. The security camera footage shows the figure appearing beside me at the bar, clear as I've ever seen it. It raised its own ghostly shot glass in a toasting gesture. I couldn't see this in person, only on the footage afterward, but I felt something pat my shoulder, a cold, light touch that made my skin tingle. Since then, things have calmed down. The taps don't pour on their own anymore. The jukebox works normally. Sometimes early in the morning, I catch a glimpse of something in my peripheral vision, a tall, thin shape moving behind the bar. But it doesn't feel threatening. More like protective, watchful. I've hired new staff. I tell them up front about our resident spirit. Some don't believe me. Some do, especially after they've worked a few late shifts. But no one's quit. I think Donovan's learned to coexist with us. He still does his rounds after closing, checking the doors and taps. Sometimes a glass will move a few inches, or the jukebox will play an old Irish song. But that's it. Last week, I framed that 1955 photo and hung it behind the bar. The regulars get a kick out of it, especially when I tell them Donovan's still around, making sure his bar is run right. Some even leave a shot out for him before they leave. I've learned to listen for him. The soft footsteps on quiet nights, the humming of old songs, the gentle clinking of glasses being straightened when no one's behind the bar. It's become part of the rhythm of the place, like the creak of the floorboards and the hum of the neon signs. This afternoon I was doing inventory, just like that first day when the tap started pouring on its own. I felt the familiar cold spot pass by me, and I swear I heard a voice, just barely a whisper. Looking low on Jameson. I checked. We were. I guess every bar needs a good manager. Some are just more permanent than others. The security cameras are still running. Sometimes I review the footage, watching our ghostly bartender make his rounds. He moves with purpose, checking the tables, straightening chairs no one can see him touch, standing guard over the place he loved so much in life that he couldn't leave it in death. I've stopped trying to explain it. Some things don't need explaining. Sometimes you just need to pour 2 shots at closing time, one for you and one for the bartender who never really clocked out. They say bars have personalities, shaped by years of laughter, tears, celebrations, and sorrows soaked into their walls. O'Malley's has more personality than most, and as long as Michael Donovan wants to help me run it, I'm happy to have him on staff. Just don't ask him for a Cosmo. He may be dead, but he still has standards. I still struggle to sleep at night. The doctors say it's PTSD. Maybe they're right. What happened that night in Thompson Woods changed everything I thought I knew about reality. I need to write it down, to get it out of my head. Maybe then I can finally rest. It started as a stupid dare. 5 of us, me, Mike, Sarah, Tom, and Jenny, decided to do a night hike through Thompson Woods. We were celebrating Mike's promotion at work, and after too many beers at O'Malley's bar, someone suggested we should do something crazy. The woods were only a mile from the bar, and we were just drunk enough to think it was a good idea. The temperature had dropped to around 45 degrees when we started walking. I remember checking my phone. 11:47 p.m. The moon was full, but the trees blocked most of the light. We used our phone flashlights to navigate the trail, laughing and shoving each other like teenagers. "Watch it, asshole!" Sarah yelled when Mike pretended to push her off the trail. Their laughter echoed through the trees. I walked behind them with Jenny and Tom, the gravel crunching under our feet. The first weird thing I noticed was the silence. It hit suddenly like someone had pressed a mute button. The crickets stopped chirping. The wind died. Even our footsteps seemed muffled. "Hey guys," Jenny stopped walking. "Do you hear that?" We all stopped. At first I heard nothing. Then I caught it, a soft scratching sound, like fingernails on tree bark. It came from somewhere in the darkness beyond our lights. "Probably just a raccoon," Tom said, but his voice cracked. We kept walking, but closer together now. The scratching followed us. Sometimes it came from the left, sometimes the right. Sometimes it seemed to be right behind us, but when we turned around, nothing was there. That's when we found the cabin. It appeared suddenly around a bend in the trail, a dark shape against the darker trees. The building was maybe 20 feet square, with walls made of old logs and a roof that sagged in the middle. No windows, just a door hanging crooked on rusty hinges. "This wasn't here before," Mike said. He'd grown up in the area and hiked these woods hundreds of times. "Maybe we took a wrong turn?" Sarah suggested. I pulled out my phone to check the map, but there was no signal. The others checked their phones too, all dead, even though they'd been fully charged when we left the bar. The scratching sound got louder. Something moved in the trees behind us. Just a shadow, but we all saw it. Without discussing it, we ran toward the cabin. Mike reached the door first and yanked it open. The hinges screamed. We piled inside and Tom slammed the door shut behind us. Our phone lights revealed a single room with a dirt floor, empty except for an old wooden chair in one corner and what looked like a trap door in the floor. The air smelled wrong, like wet earth and something else I couldn't identify. "What the fuck is this place?" Jenny whispered. Before anyone could answer, we heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate steps circling the cabin. The wooden walls creaked as something pressed against them. Then the whispering started. It wasn't English. It wasn't any language I recognized. The sounds were wrong. Too many consonants. Words that seemed to fold in on themselves. Multiple voices. Getting closer. Speaking faster. Sarah grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. "Tell me you guys hear that." "We need to get out of here," Tom said. He took a step toward the door. The whispering stopped. The silence lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then something slammed into the door so hard the whole cabin shook. Tom jumped back. Sarah screamed. More impacts followed. On the walls, the roof. The logs groaned under the assault. Dust and dirt rained down from the ceiling. "The trap door," Mike said suddenly. He was already pulling at the iron ring set into the wooden floor. "Help me." Tom and I grabbed the ring. The door was heavy, but it lifted with a grinding sound. Our lights revealed a hole about 3 feet square with old wooden steps leading down. The attacks on the cabin intensified. Something was tearing at the roof. We could hear wood splintering. "Go!" I shouted. "Now!" Sarah went first, then Jenny. Tom followed. Mike hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you. Go." He disappeared down the steps. I moved to follow, but stopped when I heard the door start to splinter. I turned and shined my light toward the noise. Through the gaps in the breaking door, I saw movement. Shapes that didn't make sense. Long limbs. Too many limbs. And eyes. Dozens of glowing eyes. I almost fell down the steps in my rush to follow the others. I pulled the trap door shut above me, just as the cabin door exploded inward. The steps led down about 15 feet to a narrow tunnel. I could see the others' lights ahead, moving fast. I ran after them, trying not to think about the sounds coming from above. The scraping, the chittering, the impossible footsteps. The tunnel curved and branched. We took turns at random, running blind. The air got colder. The walls changed from dirt to stone. Water dripped somewhere ahead. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, we hit a dead end. Solid rock wall. No other passages. "No, no, no," Sarah said. She was crying. We turned around, but the sounds were getting closer. Our lights showed nothing in the darkness of the tunnel, but the whispers echoed off the stone walls. They were speaking faster now, almost frantic. "Kill the lights," Mike whispered. "What? Are you crazy?" Jenny hissed. "Trust me. Kill them." One by one, we turned off our phone lights. The darkness was absolute. I pressed my back against the cold stone wall, trying to control my breathing. The whispers got closer. I could smell them now, a musty, organic smell that made my stomach turn. Something scraped against stone just around the corner. I closed my eyes, even though it made no difference in the pitch darkness. My heart pounded so hard I was sure they could hear it. The scraping stopped, right in front of us. I felt something brush against my face, something cold and rough like tree bark. I bit my lip to keep from screaming. The whispering was right in my ear now. I could feel breath on my skin, but it wasn't warm like human breath. It was cold, like wind from a deep cave. Then, suddenly it stopped. We stood frozen in the darkness for what felt like hours. Nobody dared move or speak. Eventually, Tom whispered, "Are they gone?" The silence stretched out. Finally, Mike clicked his light on. The tunnel was empty. We waited another 10 minutes, then slowly made our way back through the tunnels. It took a long time. We'd gotten turned around during our panic, but eventually we found the steps leading up to the trap door. Mike went first, pushing the door open carefully. The cabin was empty. The door hung in splinters, and deep gouges marked the walls, but whatever had made them was gone. We ran all the way back to the road. Nobody spoke. We didn't stop running until we reached the streetlights. The police didn't believe us, of course. They searched the woods the next day but found nothing. No cabin, no tunnel, not even a foundation or hole in the ground where they should have been. We don't talk about it much anymore. Tom moved to California. Sarah and Jenny stopped returning my calls. Mike still lives in town, but he drinks too much now. I went back once in daylight, trying to find the trail we'd taken. I thought if I could just see the place again, make sense of what happened, maybe the nightmares would stop. I found nothing, but as I was leaving, I heard it, just for a moment, that scratching sound. And underneath it, barely audible, the whispers. I ran. I haven't been back to Thompson Woods since then. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up to the sound of scratching at my bedroom walls. And when I press my ear against the wall, I can almost make out words in that impossible language. The doctors say it's PTSD. They've got me on 3 different medications, but they don't understand. None of them were there. None of them heard the whispers. None of them saw what I saw through that splintering door. I write this now not because I expect anyone to believe me. I write it as a warning. If you're ever hiking at night and find a cabin that shouldn't be there, don't go inside. No matter what you hear in the darkness behind you, don't open that door. Because sometimes the things that live in the spaces we can't explain get curious about us too. And their curiosity is anything but harmless. Last night I heard scratching in my walls again, but this time it was different. This time I understood one of the words they were whispering. They were saying my name. I wasn't supposed to be here. That's what I kept telling myself as I paced the hallway of my childhood home at 2 a.m., listening to the sound of my brother's breathing machine through his partially open bedroom door. But Mom needed a break, and I was the only one who could help. Mark's condition had gotten worse over the past year. The doctors called it rapid onset neurodegeneration, but that was just a fancy way of saying my 32-year-old brother was slowly losing control of his body, and no one knew why. I checked my phone. 2:07 a.m. The harsh blue light made me squint in the darkness. 5 more hours until the morning nurse arrived. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors as I walked to the kitchen. The house felt different at night. Bigger, emptier. The suburban silence pressed against the windows like a physical thing. The coffee maker gurgled as I started another pot. I needed to stay awake. Mark sometimes had episodes where his breathing would get irregular, and someone needed to be alert enough to adjust his BiPAP machine if necessary. I leaned against the counter, rubbing my eyes. That's when I heard it. "Hey." Mark's voice, clear as day, coming from the backyard. I froze. My hand was still pressed against my face, and I could feel my pulse quicken under my fingers. That was impossible. Mark hadn't been able to speak above a whisper for months, and he definitely couldn't walk. "Come here. I need help." The voice came again, stronger this time. My throat went dry. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out into the darkness. The motion sensor light hadn't triggered, which meant nothing was moving out there. The yard was empty, just Mom's garden and Dad's old tool shed, exactly as they'd always been. "Mark?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No response, just crickets and the distant hum of the neighbor's air conditioning unit. I practically ran to Mark's room, my sock-covered feet sliding on the hardwood. The door creaked as I pushed it open wider. Mark was exactly where he should be, lying in his medical bed, the BiPAP mask secured over his face, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The machine's digital display showed normal readings. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness as I walked through the house, checking every room. Living room, empty. Dad's old office, nothing but dusty furniture. Guest bathroom, just the dripping faucet Mom kept meaning to fix. Back in the kitchen, I poured my coffee with unsteady hands, spilling some on the counter. I was tired. That was it. I'd been awake for nearly 20 hours, and my brain was playing tricks on me. I took a long sip of coffee, the bitter liquid burning my tongue. "I'm in here now." Mark's voice again, this time from the hallway behind me. The coffee mug slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. Coffee splashed across my legs, but I barely felt it. Because that voice, it wasn't just similar to Mark's. It was exactly his voice, down to the slight Massachusetts accent he'd picked up during college, the way he used to sound before the disease. "This isn't funny," I said to the empty hallway, my voice cracking. "Who's there?" Silence. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter, the big one Mom used for chopping vegetables. My palms were sweating as I gripped the handle. The logical part of my brain knew this had to be some kind of prank, but logic wasn't exactly in control at the moment. The hallway stretched out before me, dark except for the pale blue nightlight plugged in near the bathroom. I took a step forward, and the floorboard creaked under my weight. The sound seemed to echo through the entire house. "Check the closet." The voice was closer now, just around the corner near the front door. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I reached for the hall light switch with my free hand, but nothing happened when I flipped it. The bulb must have burned out. I edged forward, keeping my back to the wall. The knife felt useless in my sweaty grip. I reached the corner and took a deep breath, then quickly looked around it. Empty. The front door was still locked, deadbolt engaged. No one could have gotten in that way. I checked the coat closet. Nothing but winter jackets and old shoes. A loud thump came from upstairs, directly above me. My whole body went rigid. There shouldn't be anyone up there. I hadn't been to the second floor all night. There was no reason to. Mark's room was on the first floor now, converted from Dad's old office after he got sick. Another thump, followed by the distinct sound of footsteps crossing the upstairs hallway. I retreated to Mark's room, my breathing rapid and shallow. He was still asleep, undisturbed by whatever was happening. I closed his door as quietly as possible and pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. Who could I call? The police? And tell them what? That I was hearing my disabled brother's voice coming from impossible places? That someone might be upstairs even though all the doors and windows were locked? More footsteps overhead, slow and deliberate. They stopped directly above Mark's room. I pressed myself against the wall next to the door, knife raised. Sweat ran down my back, soaking through my t-shirt. The house's central air kicked on, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Look at him," Mark's voice said, now right outside the bedroom door. "Look how peaceful he is." My breath caught in my throat. The door handle started to turn, slow and precise. I raised the knife higher, my muscles tensed to strike. The door swung open. Nothing was there. The hallway was empty. I stayed frozen in place, waiting. The only sounds were the whir of Mark's breathing machine and my own ragged breathing. Then I heard it. A wet, dragging sound coming from the hallway. Like something heavy being pulled across the floor. It was getting closer. I wanted to run, but I couldn't leave Mark. Whatever was out there, I had to protect him. The dragging sound stopped just outside the doorway. "Do you want to see what I really look like?" The voice was different now, still Mark's but distorted, like it was coming from underwater. I saw something move in the darkness of the hallway. A shape, darker than the surrounding shadows, began to rise up. It was tall, too tall, stretching up toward the ceiling. I caught a glimpse of something that might have been a face, but it was wrong. The proportions were all wrong. The scream that had been building in my throat finally broke free. I lunged forward with the knife, slashing at the shape. My blade met empty air, and I stumbled into the hallway. The shape was gone. The hallway was empty again. I slammed the bedroom door shut and locked it, then dragged Mark's heavy dresser in front of it. The wood scraped loudly against the floor, but I didn't care. I just needed to keep whatever that thing was away from us. My phone showed 2:43 a.m. 4 more hours until the nurse arrived. I sat on the floor next to Mark's bed, knife clutched to my chest, and waited. The voice called out several more times that night, from different parts of the house. Sometimes it sounded like Mark, sometimes like a twisted version of him. I heard more footsteps, more dragging sounds, but whatever it was, it couldn't get through the barricaded door. When the nurse arrived at 7 a.m., she found me still sitting there, the knife lying next to me on the floor. She asked why the dresser was moved, why there was broken glass and dried coffee in the kitchen. I told her I'd had a rough night. What else could I say? Mark slept through it all, peaceful and unaware. When he woke up, his condition was the same as always, barely able to move, barely able to speak. I called Mom later that morning and told her I couldn't watch Mark anymore. I made up an excuse about work getting too busy. She was disappointed but understood. I felt guilty, but I couldn't go back to that house. Because I know what I heard that night, what I saw. And I know that something is in there with Mark. Something that wears his voice like a mask, something that's just waiting for another chance to show itself. Sometimes late at night, when I'm alone in my apartment, my phone rings. The caller ID shows Mark's number. I never answer it. Because I know Mark can't dial a phone anymore, and I know it isn't really him calling. I shouldn't have agreed to house sit for Mike. That's what I keep telling myself as I sit in my car outside his childhood home at 3 a.m., engine running, hands shaking on the steering wheel. I need to write this down while it's fresh. While I can still remember every detail of what happened in there, maybe then someone will understand why I ran. It started 3 days ago when Mike called asking for a favor. He'd inherited his parents' old house after they moved to Florida, but hadn't been able to sell it yet. The pipes had burst during the winter freeze, and he needed someone to stay there while the plumbers fixed everything. I'd been between jobs for 2 months, so a week in a quiet suburb sounded perfect. Free lodging, plus Mike would pay me. Easy money. The house looked normal enough from the outside. 2 stories, red brick, white trim that needed painting. Mike gave me a quick tour when I arrived. Kitchen, living room, 3 bedrooms upstairs. Standard stuff. Then we reached the basement door. "This stays locked," he said, pulling out an old brass key. "Nothing down there but junk and the furnace. No reason to go poking around." He demonstrated the deadbolt. Thick steel, newer than the rest of the house's hardware. "Just leave it be, okay?" I shrugged. Made sense. Old houses collect crap in their basements. Who wants to deal with that? The first day went fine. The plumbers came, did their work, left. I caught up on some reading, watched TV, ordered pizza, normal house-sitting stuff. But that night, I noticed something odd. I was heading upstairs to bed when I heard it. A soft thump from behind the basement door, like someone bumping against it. I froze, listening. Nothing. Must have been the house settling. The next morning I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Old houses make weird noises. But around noon I was in the kitchen and saw the door move. Not much, just a slight wobble, like someone had grabbed the handle on the other side and given it a gentle shake. The deadbolt held firm. I called Mike. "Hey, weird question. Does the basement door ever, move on its own?" "What do you mean?" His voice got tight. "I don't know, just seems like it shakes sometimes. Probably just air pressure or something." "Yeah, probably that. Listen, just don't mess with it, okay? The lock's there for a reason. Keep it shut." I wanted to press him, but something in his tone made me back off. Still, I started watching the door more closely. Every few hours, it would twitch. Sometimes just a tremor, sometimes a definite pull, like someone testing the handle. The deadbolt never budged. That second night, the sound started. I was up late streaming a movie when I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate steps crossing the second floor. I muted the TV. The steps continued, someone wearing heavy boots, moving from room to room. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911. Then the footsteps reached the top of the stairs and started down. Each step creaked under invisible weight. My heart hammered. I couldn't move. The steps reached the bottom of the stairs. Stopped. Then they started again, heading toward the basement door. I watched, barely breathing, as they crossed the entry hall. The door didn't open. The steps simply passed through it, continuing down into the basement. I spent the rest of the night on the couch, every light in the house blazing. No more sounds came from below. When morning arrived, I seriously considered leaving. But I'd promised Mike. And really, what had actually happened? Some weird noises in an old house. I was being stupid. The third day, things escalated. The door's movement became more violent, sharp yanks that made the frame rattle. The footsteps returned, but now they paced, up and down the basement stairs for hours, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, always that same heavy tread. I tried drowning it out with music, TV, anything. Nothing helped. The sounds cut through everything. By evening, I was a wreck. I hadn't slept properly in 2 days. Every noise made me jump. That's when I made my mistake. I convinced myself I had to know what was down there. Just a quick look. Then I could prove to myself it was nothing, just pipes and old furniture making noise. I found the key where Mike had left it, on top of the kitchen door frame. My hands shook as I approached the basement door. The footsteps had stopped. The house was completely silent. The key slid into the lock. I hesitated, then turned it. The deadbolt clicked back. I reached for the handle. Before I could touch it, something slammed into the other side of the door. Hard. The impact knocked me backward. The door shuddered in its frame as something struck it again and again. Through the wood came a sound. Not quite a voice, not quite a growl, but it was trying to form words. I scrambled away, fumbling for the key. The pounding continued as I fought to get the key into the lock. Just as I turned it, the handle started to turn from the other side. I heard the mechanism grinding as whatever was down there fought against the deadbolt. The key nearly snapped in my hand, but the lock held. The assault on the door continued for another minute, then stopped abruptly. In the silence that followed, I heard something new. Crying. Soft, muffled sobs coming from the basement. They sounded almost human. Almost. I backed away from the door. My phone was already in my hand. Mike's number dialed. "What the hell is in your basement?" I demanded when he answered. A long pause. "You tried to open the door, didn't you? There's something down there. Something alive." Mike sighed. "Listen carefully. Get out of the house. Right now. Don't pack. Don't grab anything. Just go. I'll be there in 4 hours. Not until you tell me what's going on. Remember Tommy? My little brother?" I hadn't thought about Tommy in years. He'd disappeared when we were kids. Just vanished one day. They never found him. What about him? He never disappeared. He changed, started becoming something else. Mom and Dad, they tried to help him, tried doctors, priests, everything, but he kept getting worse, more violent, less human. The basement was the only place strong enough to hold him. I could barely speak. "That thing down there? That's Tommy? Part of him, maybe. We don't know anymore. Just get out, please." I didn't need to be told again. I ran for my car, not even bothering to lock the front door behind me. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced back at the house. Through the basement window, I caught a glimpse of movement, something pale pressing against the glass. A hand, but with too many joints, fingers too long and sharp. That was 20 minutes ago. I'm still sitting in my car, a mile away, trying to make sense of it all. My phone keeps buzzing, Mike calling back. But I can't talk to him yet. Can't process what he told me. Can't forget what I saw. And I keep thinking about Tommy, about a little kid trapped in that basement for 20 years, slowly turning into whatever I heard behind that door. Was anything human still left in there? Was that why it cried? The sun's coming up now. Mike will be here soon. He'll want to know exactly what happened, what I heard, what I saw. I'll tell him everything I've written here. But I won't go back in that house. Some doors are locked for a reason. Somewhere behind me, a dog starts barking, then another. A car alarm goes off in the distance. I look in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see something moving in the pre-dawn shadows. But there's nothing there. Just an empty street growing lighter by the minute. I start my car. Time to get as far away from here as I can. Yet even as I drive, I can't shake one final horrible thought. The basement door had a deadbolt on both sides. Not just to keep people out, to keep something in. The scratching sound started at 2:17 a.m. I know because I checked my phone the moment I heard it. I'd only been in the house for 3 days, and the renovation crew had left tools and materials scattered everywhere. The basement was just a concrete shell waiting to be finished. I should have known better than to buy a house under renovation, but the price was right, and I needed to move fast after my divorce. I pulled my blanket tighter and tried to ignore it. Probably just rats. The contractor had warned me there might be some until they sealed everything up. But then I heard the voice. "Hello?" It was faint, muffled, coming from below my bedroom floor. "Is anyone there?" I sat up, heart pounding. The voice was distinctly female, young, maybe 20s or 30s. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The bedroom was empty except for my mattress on the floor and some moving boxes. "Hello?" The voice called again. "I need help." My throat went dry. I stood up, my bare feet cold against the hardwood. The renovation crew had pulled up all the carpeting, leaving the floors stripped bare throughout the house. Each step I took echoed slightly. "Is someone down there?" I called out. "Yes, please help." The voice was clearer now, desperate. "I'm trapped." I pulled on my jeans and a t-shirt. The house was cold. The heating system was being replaced and wouldn't be working for another week. My breath made little clouds in the beam of my phone's flashlight as I walked down the hallway to the kitchen. The basement door was in the kitchen, next to where the new refrigerator would eventually go. Right now, there was just an empty space with exposed pipes. I put my hand on the door handle. It was ice cold. "I'm coming down," I called out. "Hold on." The basement stairs were temporary, just wooden planks nailed to supports. The contractor said they'd install proper stairs next week. I tested the first step with my foot. It creaked but held firm. My phone light caught dust motes floating in the air as I made my way down. The basement was huge, running the full length of the house. Plastic sheets hung from the ceiling, dividing it into sections where different work was being done. Stacks of drywall leaned against one wall. Paint cans and tools were scattered around. "Where are you?" I called out. "Over here." The voice came from behind one of the plastic sheets. "Please hurry." I pushed the sheet aside. My light revealed a section of unfinished wall with exposed studs and insulation. Power tools sat on a workbench. A sledgehammer leaned against the wall. "Hello? Behind the wall." The voice was clearer now. "There's a door. They sealed me in." I moved my light along the wall. There, between two studs, I could see the edge of what looked like an old door, painted the same color as the concrete. If I hadn't been looking for it, I would have missed it completely. "I see it," I said. "Hold on, I'll try to open it." I grabbed the edge of the door and pulled. It didn't budge. I could see old hinges painted over multiple times. The door seemed to be sealed shut with paint and age. "Please." The voice was right on the other side now. "I've been here so long." I grabbed the sledgehammer. "Stand back from the door." I swung it at the hinges. The impact sent vibrations up my arms. Again and again, paint chips and rust flew with each hit. Finally, the top hinge broke free. The bottom hinge was tougher. Sweat ran down my back despite the cold. My arms ached. But after several more swings, it gave way too. The door fell inward with a crash. My light revealed a small room, maybe 6 feet square. The walls were bare concrete. Empty except for... The door slammed behind me. I spun around. Complete darkness. "No!" I ran to the door and pushed. It didn't move. "Hey, let me out!" Laughter echoed in the tiny space. Not the young female voice from before. This was different, deeper, wrong somehow. "Thank you," the new voice said. "It's been so long since I had company." I pounded on the door. "This isn't funny. Open it." "But you just got here," the voice said. "And I've been so lonely." My phone light flickered. The battery was at 12%. "Who are you?" I demanded. "What do you want?" "Want?" The voice seemed to come from all around me now. "I want what anyone wants after being trapped alone for decades. I want to talk, to share stories, to pass the time until sunrise." "What happens at sunrise?" "The workers come. They'll let you out. Probably." The voice chuckled. "If you survive that long. If you don't go mad first, like the others." I slid down to sit with my back against the door, knees pulled to my chest. The concrete floor was ice cold through my jeans. My phone showed 2:43 a.m., over 4 hours until sunrise. "There weren't any others," I said. "You're lying." "Am I?" "How do you think I learned to imitate voices so well? All those people coming to investigate strange sounds, breaking down the door to help someone in distress. Such good Samaritans. I tried to control my breathing, stay calm, think. The contractors have been working down here for weeks. They would have found this room, found you. They don't hear me. I only speak to those who live here, those who sleep above me night after night. Their dreams seep down through the floorboards, make me stronger." My phone light dimmed further. 8% battery. You're not real, I said. This is some kind of trick, or I'm having a mental breakdown from the stress of the divorce and the move. Oh, I'm very real. The voice was closer now, right next to my ear. Here, let me prove it. Something cold touched the back of my neck. I jerked away, scrambling to the center of the tiny room. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Don't touch me. But I'm so curious about you, the voice said. About your fear, your pain, the loneliness that drove you to buy this house, to live here alone. Stop it. I can taste it on you, the betrayal, the anger, the emptiness inside that keeps you awake at night. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the voice continued, now seeming to come from inside my own head. She left you for someone else, didn't she? Someone younger, more successful. She took everything, the house, the friends, the life you built together. Left you with nothing but debt and broken dreams. Shut up, I screamed. Get out of my head. My phone died. Total darkness crashed down. I heard movement in the darkness. Something sliding across concrete. Coming closer. Now we can really talk, the voice said. No more distractions. Just you and me and all those delicious memories. I pressed myself into a corner, trying to make myself as small as possible. The air had grown colder. Each breath burned in my lungs. Please, I whispered. Just let me go. But I'm not holding you here. The door is sealed from the outside. I'm as trapped as you are. A pause. Though I've learned to make the best of it, to feed on the fear and pain of others, it sustains me, keeps me somewhat sane. Something brushed against my leg. I kicked out reflexively but hit nothing but air. What are you? I don't remember anymore. I was something else once, something human, but that was so long ago, before they sealed me in, before I learned to reach through dreams, to call out with borrowed voices. Time became meaningless in the darkness. Minutes stretched like hours. The voice kept talking, sometimes whispering, sometimes screaming. It pulled memories from my mind, things I'd tried to forget. My ex-wife's face when she told me she was leaving. The day I found her texts to the other man. The night I got drunk and crashed my car. I started talking back eventually, arguing, crying, raging, anything to keep my mind focused, to stay sane. Tell me about the crash, the voice urged. About the guilt you still carry. No. About how you almost died. How part of you wanted to die. Stop it. About how you bought this house because it was as broken as you are. How fitting that you found your way to me. I slammed my head back against the wall, using the pain to ground myself. You're not real. This isn't real. Then how do I know about the pills you keep in your nightstand? The ones you stare at late at night when the silence gets too loud? I lunged forward, swinging wildly in the darkness. Get out of my head! My fist hit concrete. Pain exploded through my hand. I cradled it against my chest, feeling warm blood drip between my fingers. The voice laughed. Yes, feel it. The pain makes you real, makes you alive. I slumped to the floor, cradling my injured hand. Why are you doing this? Because I can, because I must, because the hunger never ends. The voice was everywhere now, filling the tiny room. Because your pain is exquisite. Time passed. I drifted in and out of consciousness. The voice kept talking, but I stopped responding. Focused on my breathing, on the pain in my hand, on staying sane. I thought about my ex-wife, about the life we'd had, the future we'd planned, all gone now. But for the first time, I felt something besides pain when I thought of her, something like acceptance. You're getting boring, the voice complained. Where's that delicious agony from before? I said nothing. Fine. Let's try something else. The temperature dropped suddenly. Ice crystals formed on my skin. The air grew thick, hard to breathe. Are you afraid of dying? The voice whispered. Of freezing in the dark, alone, forgotten? I pulled my knees tighter to my chest, trying to conserve warmth. My teeth chattered. No one will miss you. No one will look for you. The workers will find your body and assume you had an accident. Just another renovation gone wrong. I focused on my breathing. In, out, stay calm. You're not even trying anymore, the voice shrieked. Fight back, scream, beg. No, I managed through chattering teeth. Then freeze, die, join me in this darkness forever. The cold intensified. My fingers and toes went numb, but somehow the fear was gone, replaced by a strange calm. I'm not afraid of you anymore, I whispered. Liar. You feed on fear, on pain, on darkness. But I've lived through darkness before. After she left, after the crash, I survived. Shut up. You can't hurt me more than I've already been hurt. Can't make me more alone than I've already been. The voice screamed, an inhuman sound of rage and frustration. The cold vanished suddenly. Warmth flooded back into my limbs. You're supposed to break, the voice howled. They always break. Not me, I said. Not anymore. Silence fell, complete and absolute. For a long time, I heard nothing but my own breathing. Then faintly from above, voices, real voices, the renovation crew arriving. Hello, I shouted. Down here, help. Footsteps on the stairs, lights piercing the darkness as the door was forced open. Jesus Christ. One of the workers helped me up. How long have you been down here? All night, I said. The door, it closed behind me. They led me upstairs. The morning sun through the kitchen windows was painfully bright. One of the workers wrapped a blanket around my shoulders while another called an ambulance to check my injured hand. That room shouldn't even exist, the contractor said, shaking his head. It's not on any of the plans. We'll seal it up properly today. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak about what had happened. They wouldn't believe me anyway. As the paramedics arrived, I heard it one last time. That voice, faint and fading. Until next time. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Some darkness you survive. Some pain makes you stronger. Some nights of terror lead to dawns of understanding. I would sell the house, of course. Move somewhere else. Start over again. But I would carry with me the knowledge that I had faced something ancient and hungry in that basement room. Something that fed on fear and pain and loneliness. And I had survived. The paramedic wrapped my hand, asking questions about how I'd heard it. I gave simple answers. The truth would stay buried in that basement room, sealed behind concrete and drywall, whispering to the dreams of future owners. But its power over me was broken. The dawn had come, and I was free. I wasn't supposed to be working that night at the Fleming Historical Museum. My coworker Mark had called in sick and I needed the extra hours. Money's been tight since Sarah left, taking half of everything with her. So there I was, doing the night shift alone in a building full of dead people's stuff. The pay was decent and usually nothing happened except dust settling on glass cases filled with Civil War uniforms and Native American arrowheads. That changed 3 weeks ago. I remember the exact moment things got weird. I was doing my 11 p.m. walkthrough, checking the locks on the second floor when I heard it. The distinct click of a door unlocking somewhere down the hall. Not the electronic beep of our security system, but the mechanical sound of an old lock turning. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness as I walked toward the sound. The Victorian exhibit wing was supposed to be locked up tight. I'd checked it myself an hour ago. But now the heavy wooden door stood open about 3 inches, letting out a draft of cold air that shouldn't have been there. The climate control keeps every room at exactly 70 degrees. I pushed the door open, my boots squeaking against the polished floor. Hello? Security. My voice echoed off the glass cases displaying fancy dresses and jewelry from the 1800s. No answer. The motion sensors hadn't gone off, and the security cameras showed nothing on my last monitor check. Still, protocol said I had to investigate. I did a sweep of the room, checking behind every display case and in all the corners. Nothing out of place. No broken windows. No sign of entry. I locked the door again, testing the handle twice to make sure it caught. Must have been a faulty lock. I'd submit a maintenance request in the morning. But then it happened again the next night. And the next. Always around the same time. Always that same mechanical click. Always the Victorian wing. I started taking detailed notes, documenting every incident. The museum director just shrugged it off when I mentioned it. Old buildings make noise, she said. The temperature changes at night. Things settle. That explanation worked fine until last Tuesday when I saw the shadow. I was sitting at the security desk watching the monitors and filling out paperwork. Movement caught my eye on camera 3. A dark shape passing quickly between the Native American pottery displays. By the time I looked up at the actual hallway through the glass partition, it was gone. I rewound the footage. Nothing showed up on the recording. The camera hadn't caught whatever I'd seen. The next night, I brought a personal camera from home. High-end model with night vision capability. I set it up facing the spot where I'd seen the shadow, then went about my rounds. When I checked the footage later, the screen showed nothing but static during the exact 2 minutes when I thought I'd seen something move past the lens. That's when the whispers started. At first, they were so quiet I thought I was imagining things. Just the edge of sound, like someone exhaling from very far away. But they got clearer over the next few nights. Started to form words. James. My name. Whispered in the dark. I was in the basement storage area when I first heard it clearly, cataloging some new acquisitions. The voice came from right behind me. Soft, but distinct. Female, I think. Young. I spun around so fast I knocked over a box of pottery fragments. Nobody there. Just rows of metal shelves disappearing into the shadows. This is private property, I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. If someone's here, you need to leave now. The only response was the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I've been working security for 15 years. Done night shifts at warehouses, office buildings, construction sites. I'm not the jumpy type. But something about hearing my name whispered in that basement made the hair on my arm stand up. I started bringing coffee from home instead of using the break room machine in the basement. Took the stairs instead of the service elevator. Small changes to avoid being alone in the darker parts of the building. But the whispers followed me. They got more frequent, more insistent. Sometimes right next to my ear as I was locking up for the night. Sometimes echoing down empty hallways ahead of me. Always my name. Always in that same young female voice. I tried to rationalize it. Old ventilation system making weird noises. My mind playing tricks after too many long nights alone. But then the photos started appearing. The first one was face down on my desk when I came back from rounds last Friday. Black and white, yellowed with age. It showed a young woman in a Victorian dress standing in front of the museum. The building looked newer in the photo, but it was definitely the same place. She was smiling directly at the camera, one hand raised in a wave. I flipped it over. Written on the back in faded ink. Elizabeth Fleming, 1872. Fleming, the museum's namesake. I'd seen her portrait hanging in the main hall 100 times, but something about this casual photo felt more real, more immediate. I locked the photo in my desk drawer. Didn't mention it to anyone. What would I say? That a 150-year-old photograph materialized on my desk? The next night, another photo appeared, this time on top of the filing cabinet. Same woman, different pose. She was inside the museum now, standing next to a display case that's still there today. Still smiling. Back of the photo, Lizzie with Father's Collections, 1873. I started researching during my off hours. Elizabeth Fleming was the daughter of the museum's founder, Joseph Fleming. She helped catalog and arrange the original exhibits. Died young, typhoid fever at 22. The museum opened to the public a year after her death. More photos kept appearing, 1 or 2 each night, always in places I'd just checked minutes before, always showing Elizabeth in and around the museum. The dates on the backs got closer and closer to her death. The whispers got louder too, started forming more words beyond just my name. James, help, find it. I heard that clearly 2 nights ago while doing my midnight rounds. The voice seemed to be coming from the Victorian wing. When I went to investigate, I found another photo waiting on one of the display cases. This one showed Elizabeth standing next to a large wooden cabinet with glass doors. She wasn't smiling this time. Her expression was serious, almost worried. The back of the photo read, "Father's Special Collection, 1874." Dated just 2 months before she died. I recognized that cabinet. It's still in the Victorian wing, though it's empty now. Just decorative. But in the photo, it was filled with what looked like books and small boxes. Last night, things escalated. I was in the security office when the power went out. All the monitors went dark at once. Emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in dim red light. That's when I heard it. Not just a whisper this time, but a clear voice right next to me. "James, please, you have to find it." I nearly fell out of my chair. The voice was so close I could feel the cold air that came with it. "Find what?" I asked, my heart pounding. "What are you looking for?" "The journal, in the cabinet. He hid it after I..." The voice faded. The power came back on a few seconds later, monitors flickering to life. Another photo was on my desk. The last one I'd find I somehow knew. It showed Elizabeth lying in a bed, pale and thin, obviously sick. The date on the back was 3 days before her death. I'm sitting in the security office now, writing this all down while I wait for midnight. That's when the Victorian wing door always unlocks. But tonight, I'm going to be ready. I've got my flashlight, my camera, and a crowbar from maintenance. There's something hidden in that old cabinet, something Elizabeth needs me to find. Her father's special collection. What was in those books and boxes? What was so important that her spirit has been waiting 150 years for someone to discover it? The clock just struck midnight. I heard the click of the door down the hall. Time to find out what Elizabeth Fleming wants me to know. I grab my equipment and head toward the Victorian wing. The emergency lights cast long shadows that seem to move on their own. The temperature drops noticeably as I approach the door. It's already standing open, waiting for me. The cabinet looks exactly like it did in Elizabeth's photo, though the glass is clouded with age now. My hands shake slightly as I wedge the crowbar into the seam where the doors meet. The lock is old, probably original. It takes 3 hard pulls before it gives way with a crack. The inside of the cabinet smells like old wood and dust. My flashlight beam shows empty shelves, just like always. But when I run my hand along the back panel, I feel it. A slight gap at the bottom. A false back. The panel comes loose easily, revealing a space behind it. Something is wrapped in yellowed cloth. I pull it out carefully. It's a leather-bound book. A journal, by the look of it. As soon as my fingers touch it, the temperature in the room plummets. My breath comes out in white clouds. "Thank you," Elizabeth's voice right beside me, clearer than ever. I open the journal with trembling fingers. The first page has elegant handwriting, dated 1874. "My dearest Elizabeth, if you are reading this, then I have failed to protect you. The truth about the artifacts, what they really are, where they came from, it was too dangerous. I thought I could control it. Contain it. I was wrong. Your illness was no natural fever. It was my fault, all of it. This journal contains everything I know about the collection. Be careful who you trust with this knowledge. Some truths are better left buried. Father." The rest of the journal is filled with detailed notes, diagrams, and what look like incantations. Joseph Fleming wasn't just a collector of historical artifacts. He was collecting something else. Something dark. A cold hand touches my shoulder. I spin around, but there's nothing there. The journal feels heavy in my hands, like it's pulling me down. "Destroy it." Elizabeth's voice is urgent now. "But, please, it killed me. It will kill others. Destroy it now." I take out my lighter, against museum policy to carry one, but old habits die hard. The journal catches quickly. Blue flames eat through the pages, and I smell something that isn't just burning paper, something metallic and wrong. The temperature begins to rise as the journal burns. When the last page turns to ash, I feel it. A release, like a deep breath being let out. Thank you, James. Elizabeth's voice is fading now, growing distant. Wait, I call out. What was in the collection? What was your father dealing with? But she's gone. I can feel it. The air is normal again, no more cold spots. The whispers are silent. I clean up the ashes and put the false panel back in place. Close the cabinet doors as best I can with the broken lock. I'll tell maintenance I found it like that during rounds. The rest of my shift passes quietly. No more whispers, no more shadows, no more mysterious photos. But I keep thinking about that journal, about what Joseph Fleming was collecting, about what really killed Elizabeth. Some truths are better left buried, he wrote. Maybe he was right. I've put in my 2 weeks' notice. The museum director was disappointed but understood. Night security work isn't for everyone, she said. If she only knew. I still have all those photos of Elizabeth. They're in a box under my bed. Sometimes I take them out and look at her smile, her wave frozen in time. I wonder if she's finally at peace, now that her father's secrets are destroyed. But sometimes late at night in my apartment, I swear I can still hear whispers. Not Elizabeth's voice anymore. Something else. Something deeper. And I wonder, did we really destroy all the secrets? Or are there more things hidden in that museum waiting to be found? I'm not staying to find out. Let someone else work the night shift. Some mysteries should stay mysteries. I need to tell you what happened to me last month at the Sunrise Inn. I've been driving trucks for 20 years, stayed in hundreds of motels, but nothing like this has ever happened before. I'm writing it down now because I keep seeing that damn chair every time I close my eyes. It started around 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was hauling furniture from Chicago to Kansas City and my eyes were getting heavy. Interstate 70 stretches through the middle of nowhere in Missouri, and I knew I had to stop before I dozed off at the wheel. The Sunrise Inn's neon vacancy sign glowed through the drizzle. $29 a night, the sign promised. Good enough. The parking lot was mostly empty. Just my rig, a rusty Chevy pickup, and a couple of old sedans scattered across cracked asphalt. The office smelled like cigarettes and pine-scented cleaner. The night clerk barely looked up from his phone when I walked in. He was a skinny kid, maybe 19, with bad acne and greasy hair. Single room, I said, pulling out my wallet. He slid me a registration card. Cash or card? Card. I filled out the form while he ran my visa. The pen was chained to the counter with a piece of fishing line. Room 115, he mumbled, handing me a key attached to a plastic tag the size of a playing card. End of the building on the right. Checkout's at 11. The rain had picked up when I walked back to my truck. I grabbed my overnight bag and the smaller duffel with my valuables, wallet, laptop, papers. No way I was leaving that stuff in the cab overnight, even in the middle of nowhere. Room 115 was exactly what you'd expect for $30. Musty carpet that might have been beige once, wallpaper peeling at the seams, a queen bed with a thin brown bedspread. A wooden chair sat in the corner by the window, next to a small table with a lamp. The shade was crooked. I dropped my bags on the chair and did my usual check. Locks working, bathroom relatively clean, no obvious signs of bed bugs. The heater chugged to life when I turned it on, pumping out warm air that smelled like dust. The bed creaked when I sat down to take off my boots. My back ached from 10 hours of driving. I could hear the TV from the next room, muffled voices and canned laughter. The rain tapped against the window. I took a quick shower, changed into sweats and a t-shirt, and set my alarm for 6 a.m. The pillow was flat, but I was too tired to care. I remember glancing at the chair before I turned off the lamp. My bags slumped against each other in a heap of nylon and canvas. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. The red numbers on the clock radio were the first thing I saw when my eyes snapped open. At first, I didn't know what had woken me. The TV next door was silent. The rain had stopped. The only sound was the quiet hum of the heater. Then I noticed the chair. My bags were on the floor, not fallen over. They were placed neatly side by side next to the chair legs. But that wasn't what made my skin crawl. The chair looked wrong. The wooden seat was depressed slightly, as if someone was sitting there. The arms had indents where hands might rest. But there was nothing there, just empty air. I lay perfectly still, hardly breathing. The indents in the chair were deep enough that whoever, whatever, was sitting there had to be heavy, adult-sized. The temperature in the room felt about 10 degrees colder than when I'd fallen asleep. My first instinct was to close my eyes and tell myself I was dreaming, but I knew I wasn't. The digital clock numbers were too sharp, the hum of the heater too real, and I could feel the weight of someone else's presence in the room. I tried to think rationally. Maybe the chair cushion was just worn out in that pattern. Maybe I'd moved the bags in my sleep. But I knew that wasn't true. The chair had been solid wood, no cushion, and I hadn't sleepwalked since I was a kid. A car passed on the highway outside, headlights sweeping across the wall. In that brief flash of light, I saw the chair shift slightly, like whatever was sitting in it had adjusted its position. My heart slammed against my ribs. Sweat broke out on my forehead despite the cold. I wanted to run, but that would mean getting closer to the chair. I wanted to scream, but my throat had closed up tight. The minutes crawled by. I lay there rigid under the covers, eyes fixed on the chair. Sometimes I thought I saw movement, a slight depression in the seat-changing position, the arms of the chair flexing under invisible hands. But it was hard to be sure in the dim light filtering through the thin curtains. At 3:42 a.m., I heard something that made my blood freeze, a soft scraping sound like shoe leather against carpet. It came from the direction of the chair. I watched in horror as indents appeared in the carpet, footprints pressing into the fibers moving from the chair toward the bed. Slow, deliberate steps. The temperature dropped another few degrees. My body finally unfroze. I exploded out of the bed, scrambling backward until I hit the bathroom door. My hand found the light switch and I slapped it on. Harsh fluorescent light flooded the room. The footprints in the carpet stopped about 3 feet from where I'd been lying. The chair sat empty, but the seat was still slightly depressed. As I watched, the depression slowly lifted, like someone standing up. New footprints appeared in the carpet, moving toward the room's door. They stopped there. The door handle turned with a click. The door opened about 6 inches, then closed again. The handle turned back to its original position. I stood there shaking for what felt like hours, though the clock showed only 10 minutes had passed. Finally, I forced myself to move. I grabbed my bags from the floor, not bothering to change out of my sweats. I shoved my feet into my boots without tying them. The night clerk looked up from his phone when I slammed my key on the counter. "Checking out early?" "Yeah." My voice was hoarse. He shrugged. "No refunds after midnight." "Keep it." I pushed through the office door and practically ran to my truck. The sun was coming up by the time I pulled into a truck stop 50 miles down the highway. I sat in the cafe drinking coffee until my hands stopped shaking enough to hold the cup steady. I've tried to convince myself there are logical explanations. Old chairs can look worn in weird ways. Buildings settle and make strange noises. Tired minds play tricks. But I know what I saw, and I know something was in that chair. I still drive that route when I have to. But I don't stop at the Sunrise Inn anymore. Sometimes when I pass it at night, I look at the windows. Usually they're dark. But once, just once, I saw a light on in room 115. Through the thin curtains, I could make out the silhouette of that chair in the corner, and something was sitting in it. I've spent the week since then thinking about what happened next, about the cold spots I kept finding in my truck for the next 100 miles, about the weird indents that would appear in my passenger seat when I looked over, about the footsteps I heard in my empty trailer during rest stops. But those are different stories. Right now, I just needed to tell someone about that chair, about what happened in room 115 of the Sunrise Inn on a rainy Tuesday night in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, because I have a delivery to make tomorrow. The route takes me past that motel again. And this time, as I was checking my paperwork, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The delivery address is on the same road as the Sunrise Inn, just 2 miles past it, and it's a furniture store. They're expecting a shipment of wooden chairs.